now here, the next page 4 talks about the origin of our viruses. So this is a new concept because we always thought that our viruses flew at us from the air. Somebody coughed, or actually nobody knew and nobody discussed it. Where do our oncoviruses come from? I call them oncoviruses, but regular scientists call them oncogenes. And I procured oncogenes in order to test and found that we actually have those viruses, and they come to us from our parasites. So getting rid of parasites is still about the most important thing. Obviously, something that's eating you up gets a very high priority. So on that sheet, you see the underlined items. Oncovirus it carries. Maybe you'll recognize some because in cancer regular research, they try to find which oncovirus it is in order to put it in a category for a particular chemo treatment. But of course it doesn't do away with the virus, and it doesn't do away with the parasite, so you could never get any cure that way. And notice down here where it says MYC, M-Y-C, that's considered a very bad prognostic sign, but I find that it simply comes down, okay, we get MYC from several places, but it comes from, it's associated with mumps, another virus. Very many of us, certainly cancer patients and a person with any illness, and it can be just a minor illness too, have chronic mumps. And some of us have chronic chicken pox. And, but chronic mumps is mysterious to me. I don't know why and what it does to us. Certainly not a good thing to be able to test a person's saliva or blood and or urine and find mumps active right there. And our trick is knowing which parasite it comes from and starving the parasite so that in about 1 week you can get rid of the chronic mumps and get rid of this notorious oncogene, as you would read about it in the newspaper, but I find it is an oncovirus supplying the gene constantly, and the way to get rid of it, it's considered particularly a bad prognostic sign for breast cancer. And then if you have several of these oncoviruses, they think that you're a basket case, but we get that taken care of in the first week. Going on there, you see FOS, EBV, and then you come to SV40, that we talked about already, and that comes from the pancreatic fluke. Can you see that? And that its trigger is gallic acid. Can you see that? And that you kill it by starvation. That's it. You can also kill it in other ways, but I think you have those new concepts under your belt already. Okay, very important.
Well, just what does BWT stand for?
Black walnut tincture. And then you get down to HIV at the bottom, and that was in my book about HIV and AIDS. It also comes from the same parasite, but the trigger for it is benzene, which is why the whole continent of Africa has this disease, and very many people in the rest of the world are getting it. Because the benzene comes from the water. About 1/2 of the people in the U.S. Are getting water with benzene and PCBs and the carcinogen in it. Now on page 5, the new concept there is that every organ in your body has its own allergy. Something that allergists never taught me. But by the time you've worked with hundreds of them, it's just obvious. And so I started making a list of each one because it is a very stable fact. In other words, if you search for it, you will always find it. It's not going to be slippery and only be there occasionally. So say for breast cancer, the allergy is apiol, which we mentioned in this table of foods. And you can see that apiol comes from the soybean. It's introduction of soybean and soybean oil that has increased our breast cancer so tremendously. If you test the oils in the marketplace, let's say 20 kinds of oils, okay, common food oils used in cooking, every one of them will have some apiol in it because every one is adulterated with soy oil. Of course, it's not supposed to be adulterated, but it is. Because if you're using this device, you can find a lot smaller amount than you would with a commercial lab. And of course, a commercial lab wouldn't know how to test for apiol. So if you learn to use this technique, you will have the advantage that Hubble had with his new telescope. You'll be able to see farther, deeper, and be able to understand new concepts and ways to solve a problem that you otherwise couldn't. So take a look on here, on this. Here we have the cancer location on the left and the food allergy on the right. And sometimes, okay, I won't explain all the questions it raises, because that's discussed in the book. This is just meant to be a sample to show you which new concepts are discussed in the book. Let's jump right over to page 12, called The Real Carcinogen. We thought that we have a single cell that started mutating years and years ago, and that nobody knows what caused that, and so everybody thinks that that there are many different causes, and that causes many different cancers, and it's totally hopeless from that angle. And that's quite untrue. I found say 15 years ago, that everybody that's a cancer patient has the intestinal fluke, some stage or other. I didn't know which stage yet is responsible. But there are no exceptions. In the thousands of patients that I've dealt with, I've tested every one, and there are no exceptions. And I didn't know why. So I tried to search where it was coming from by testing each patient for a list of things in their environment, including their dust and their water. And by 1999, I finally found it in their water. The person sitting right beside them, their sister or friend, also brought their water. And I usually included that in my testing. And I found that the cancer patient had one kind of water and the non-cancer patient had a different kind. And it turned out that the cancer patient had water that was chlorinated with ordinary supermarket bleach called Clorox. And it came from filters they had attached to their system, or a softener attached to their system. And in about 1/4 of cases, the water department itself had added ordinary bleach to the water. So, of course, my immediate improvement was to have the cancer patient change their water, go and live with the sister and recover with the sister or whoever did not have it, and then figure out how to clean up their own system. But I wanted to know what it was in the water. And I didn't find, I found that the bleach by 1999, and then as late as maybe 2 years ago, I found that every cancer patient in their malignancy had polonium. So that's what that is on the left end. A radioactive item about second worst to plutonium. Extremely bad. And then it doesn't act alone. It combines itself with this lanthanide element called cerium, which comes from plastic. In other words, you drink the water with polonium and pass it through your mouth with plastic teeth, and you've got the polonium cerium part of it already. And then the bad chlorination, the entity that is responsible is the ferrocyanide. The water that does not cause cancer is ferricyanide, has ferricyanide. These are pipe protectors, and you just have to drink them. Protecting the pipes, water pipes from corrosion. Now, switching to plastic pipe would make that unnecessary, but that's not what they're recommending. The first 3 items you get from the water, and that's why in this afternoon's demonstration I'm going to show you the difference between water that leads to cancer and water that doesn't. Now, the 11th one isn't in here. It's in my Christmas letter. We finally found a way to filter out the ferrocyanide and, of course, the polonium. It took 2 years of development, and I'm happy to say it can be yours. They're backlogged because of some details of availability, but it's a whole house filter so that all of the house water will be free of the iron cyanides. Now, I've been talking only about cancer causation, and that is caused by one kind of chlorination. But the other kind of chlorination, which is USP and is legal, what is legally allowed, it causes our other diseases that are serious, including genetic disease. So all in all, what you need is to filter them both out. And so that's what we have achieved. And I hope it's a Christmas present for you. I have nothing to do with sales or promotion. I just wanted you to know the answer that could protect you. Thank you very much.